Hello, and welcome to the Vibrant Systems Value Integration and Exploration webinar. My name is Danielle Hauk. I am the lead consultant and founder of Vibrant Systems. And Vibrant Systems is what I like to call a community-based consulting company in the sense that community exists anywhere that we gather. And that includes like a workplace, a town, neighborhood association, and so on. And there's so many different ways we can cultivate community in our lives. And I think it's really important that we start doing that in earnest. So I help people bring that sense of community to life. I help them create that transformation in their stories, and I help them move forward in a way that they're proud about. Now, before I jump into the webinar itself, I wanted to start by saying you are all inherently worthy as you are here today. But many of us don't feel that way. I know it wasn't that long ago that I was questioning my own worth almost daily. I felt like I had to reach certain goals or do certain things in order to feel like I had any worth. But in reality, my worth or your worth is constant. And it's because we're already worthy that we deserve to live a life that supports our physical, emotional, cognitive, and spiritual well-being. For example, because I am worthy, I invest in my business. Because I am worthy, I embrace my confidence. Because I am worthy, I can stand in front of you here today and share this webinar. And this is the main difference between extrinsic and intrinsic values. Extrinsic meaning from outside of us, and intrinsic meaning from within. Before I accepted my worth as constant, I felt like I constantly had to prove myself to the world. So maybe that was, oh, I had to make a certain amount of money, or I had to have a certain role, or I had to constantly sacrifice myself for others or people please. But the reality is that meant I was living based on values that were outside of myself, based on what other people valued. And so I could do all these things, but because it wasn't in alignment with myself, I was never filling my own cup. I was never receiving in return. And on the other hand, once I took the time to explore my values and really understood what made me tick, I entered a new era of growth and transformation. And because I'm acting in alignment with my intrinsic values, I feel alive inherently. When I support live music, care for the environment, act generously, or nurture my creativity, my cup and my energy levels are inherently overflowing. I am able to fully step into that because I, like each of you, am inherently worthy of living in this energetic abundance. And I don't need people outside of me to tell me that my life has value because I already know it does. And because I'm not trying to prove myself to people whose values are just different than my own, I can just decide what values are right for me. And this makes me feel more capable and more alive than any credentials ever will. But to reach this point, I needed to take radical responsibility for myself and for my own actions. I needed to be honest with why I was doing certain things and confront the ways that I was letting other people define me, instead of just taking the lead and defining myself for myself. I needed to do the work to uncover my own values and learn how to align with those in my actions in the choices I made every single day. So in this webinar, I want to first base my value integration and exploration workshop process in the research so that you can take this information back to your workplace or your family or wherever else you feel it need to go. I will also start to guide you through the process of beginning to dig into your own intrinsic values so that you too can harness the power of self-worth and self-realization in every area of your life. I'm sharing this process, but you alone get to decide how much of it you will bring into your own life and how willing you are to embrace the transformation that this process holds. Just know that you are worthy of this work, and you are worthy of living in alignment with the values you really care about. So, does anyone have kids who are about 14 years old? Having been a 14-year-old once, I know it can be a really rough age. I know there's a lot of emotional volatility at times. And, you know, there's a lot of learning there. It was in one of my most 14-year-old moments that I was first confronted with the fact that I could choose to either live by the values I really care about or by ones that didn't serve me. So let me set the scene for you. I was camping with my family in Saskatchewan on a lake called Loon Lake, which was directly adjacent to Makwasagagan, which is a Cree Nation. And it had been a long trip. My brother was 15 at the time, and we were doing what siblings do best, which is fight. And I don't exactly remember what he said, but the hot dog that I was holding in my hand ended up flying through the air and hitting him in the chest. And my mom, bless her, threw up her white flag and went to go nap in the trailer. And I went to go mope on the beach because I was 14, and that was about how things were going at 14. But it was while I was there, moping on the beach, sitting on a swing set, just down in the dumps, that I was approached by a woman from, I assume, the Cree First Nation who was on the beach with her own family. And she had no reason to come to me. And I don't even know if she knew how she was gonna impact my life. But she sat on the swing next to me. She tried to make small talk, complimented my sunglasses. And then eventually, I wasn't biting, I was grouchy. She turns to me and she says, point blank, if you're too old to have fun on the swings, you need to rethink your life. And then she left. She went to go and spend time with her own family. And her words have stayed with me to this very day because she was right. Did I want to live a life where I stopped having fun on the swings? Yes, I was only 14, but even now, if I have the chance to go swinging on the swings, I'm going to do that. And she added perspective to my life in the sense that I didn't have to give in to, moping. I didn't have to give in to feeling like a victim in that circumstance. I didn't have to give in to the angst at the time. And, you know, I could consciously choose instead to do things that filled my cup, that I enjoyed. So it was another decade before I started integrating this very consciously into my life, and then another year still before I started integrating it into my work and my business. But now that I've changed my life to focus on the way my heart sings and doing what things that make my heart sing that brings me satisfaction and fulfillment, I have transformed and I have witnessed this firsthand how it changes my energy levels, changes how easy it is for me to get up in the morning, and how easy it is to take on a challenge because I know I'm doing that challenge because I want to do it, not because someone else has told me to. So that's my story. That started me on this. It's been a long journey, and it's one I've been excited to walk since I've started to. So before I really jump into the presentation, to the research, I want to start with this icebreaker and take the time to ask yourself this question. But who are my people? Who do I gravitate towards in a social setting or in the workplace? And why? Is it, their sense of discipline, their ability to finish a complex project? Is it how friendly they are to those around them? Is it their sense of humor? What do we value about these people? Why do we value having them in our lives? I think this is a really important question to ask because whether we are aware of it or not, the people we tend to gravitate towards hold values that are similar to our own, or at least values that we admire and maybe wish to cultivate, right? Even if we're jealous, it's not that we're actually jealous of that person, it's that they're showing us who we can be, and, maybe we're not taking that at this time. And I like this one because it's a good indicator. It's a good way to start to dive into, okay, I'm only jealous of this because I like it, or I only admire this because I value it. And, if we aren't already practicing some of those values, it's a good hint that maybe we should. But why are values important? What is the value of values? Research by the likes of Forbes, Harvard Business Review, and WorkStars indicates that when we integrate our values into the work we do, we are happier, more creative, and more productive, and more committed to our roles. This not only benefits our teams, the organizations we work for, and the clients we work with, but working in alignment with personal values can cascade into our lives outside of work. We are able to be more present with our loved ones and make values-aligned choices in our personal lives, increasing our overall well-being and life satisfaction. In Norway return to work programs, this values connection is so well established that values-based acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT, is integrated into occupational health programs. ACT involves mindfulness on one hand, which is a practice that helps develop space between a stimulus and our reaction to it, which gives us the ability to choose how we want to act in a given circumstance. ACT also guides clients through identifying what they care about, what they value, what brings them satisfaction, contentment, or fulfillment. And then by combining both the mindful awareness of our actions and the awareness of what values we actually care about, we can then start to act in ways that align with those values. In the context of a return to work program, people are more empowered to return to their previous position or a new one after an injury or a challenge when they can consciously choose to practice and protect the things they care about. The success of this program has been well documented in clients' abilities to re-enter the workforce and stay in the workforce longer after re-entry. Values alignment is also a protective factor in the workforce. We are more likely to follow safety guidelines and make choices supporting our longevity when we are aware of what we care about or value. This could be our long-term health or our family. And being aware of values also helps us realize maybe some that might be contributing to some workplace problems. For example, camaraderie and humor can be really important in a lot of workplaces, but maybe the way they're being fulfilled is contributing to higher rates of recklessness or potential injury. Occupational health and safety research shows that moving towards a more holistic idea of workplace well-being by acknowledging individual values has rippling effects on health and safety workplace behaviors as well as overall satisfaction. This is present both in jobs where, there might be a lower risk of injury, such as an office position, or in more physically demanding jobs, such as maybe a laborer position. In short, when we make values conscious and understand what is driving our actions, we can choose to either integrate those values in a healthier and safer way or practice values that are more closely aligned with what we actually care about, improving overall engagement and satisfaction in the workplace. Maybe you've heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs already, maybe you haven't. You may even recognize this image here. After all, it is a hierarchy of needs, suggesting that the needs on the bottom of the pyramid need to be filled before the ones we can move up a level. Now, maybe you're aware of this, or maybe it's your first time, but humans do not operate in a strictly hierarchical sense. And, we can belong somewhere even when we're hungry. Our self-esteem may be strong even if we don't feel safe, and so on. The reality is the hierarchy or pyramid is a misrepresentation of Maslow's theory. Maslow himself never placed these needs into a pyramid, and in fact predicted many of the criticisms that you see here, such as people are rarely motivated by any one need at a given time. People's motivations are unique to them. It might not necessarily show up in this order, and that, just because you've reached a higher level doesn't mean it doesn't matter that you still need to eat and drink and be safe and so on. In fact, this pyramid wasn't popularized by psychology at all. Rather, management consultants took Maslow's theory, overgeneralized it, and replicated it without paying attention to the nuances of Maslow's work. I am here today to tackle some of that misinformation, return back to the intentions of Maslow's original theory, and tie his theory into how we can integrate values into our work lives. So, see here, Maslow's own conceptualization of the diversity of human needs is much more fluid than a pyramid represents. In fact, his understanding of human complexity and needs was greatly influenced by the Blackfoot people on Siksika Nation in Alberta. Before publishing his hierarchy of needs, Maslow spent 6 weeks on Siksika Nation hoping to validate his previous theories about dominance and hierarchies. But when he got there, he didn't see that at all. In fact, he saw people who were more confident and had higher self-esteem and were more self-actualized than most people in his own Western culture. This was in 1938, just to add some background to that. So, to honor this background rooted in, Blackfoot ideology, some have recreated Maslow's hierarchy of needs in a teepee shape. However, it is more accurate to show it in a circle as we see on the left here, which is very similar to the Blackfoot medicine wheel. And like the Blackfoot medicine wheel, Maslow's original theory recognizes that it is a balance between various needs and the values that push them that create self-actualization. And what exactly is self-actualization? According to Maslow, self-actualization is the desire to become more and more of what one is, or to become everything that one is capable of becoming. In Blackfoot, the word nitapitapi has a similar meaning, describing someone who is completely developed or who has arrived. I promised I would tie in this hierarchy or spectrum of needs with values. Maslow proposed that the needs he outlined motivated our behaviors. So we're motivated by our need to eat. We're motivated by our need to belong. And this is true. Similarly, what we value tends to drive our habits and decisions, whether we are aware of it or not. So the need is if we're hungry, we find food. But if we value our health, we're going to try and find food that is nourishing and supports our well-being. If we place a greater value on pleasure, maybe we're going to find food that's satisfying, sweet, or salty. And likewise, if we value efficiency, a microwave meal might be more important or relevant than cooking from scratch. The fact of the matter is Maslow's original theory is incomplete. It fails to capture the full picture because it isn't possible to standardize our unique core values into a psychological or management theory. And in fact, it is the values that are unique to us that bridges the gap between just meeting our needs and reaching that stage of self-actualization that Maslow proposed. Our, our personal core values are, in fact, the missing piece between just meeting our basic needs and finding fulfillment, satisfaction, meaning, and self-actualization in our lives. We each have the power to make our own hierarchy of needs that recognizes our need for balancing our physical, cognitive, emotional, and spiritual needs while prioritizing the values that are really meaningful and impactful for each of us. And this is the exercise that the Value Integration and Exploration Workshop facilitated sessions will guide cohorts through. Because we are all, as I said at the beginning, worthy of feeling like we are fulfilled and content and happy, satisfied in our lives. One who has arrived, self-actualization, becoming more of what one is, becoming everything we are capable of becoming, or, as I like to say, learning what makes your heart sing. These are all the different ways we talk about what it feels like to live in alignment with our values. For myself, I know I'm living in alignment with my values when I'm actually engaged in what I am doing. Maybe that's attending a beautiful performance. Maybe it's creating a service or a workshop that I fully believe is capable of transforming the lives of people, just like this one. For myself, I quite literally feel my heart singing when I am living in alignment with my values. So, my question to you is, what makes your heart sing? I remember when I first started down this rabbit hole, there was a part of me that was worried I would be empowering people to start practicing bad values. And so I had to ask, are there such thing as bad values? In ACT, the goal is to help identify values that people really care about that brings them joy and fulfillment in their life. And so by that definition, the only bad values are the ones that don't actually align with us to support this vision, to support this goal. On the other hand, there are some values that can lead to self-destructive tendencies or harm of others, and often these ones are unconscious. So, for example, most of us, maybe at one point of our lives, have relied on some sort of substance to just help us cope with whatever we're going through. That could be coffee, that could be alcohol, that could be cannabis, it could be anything, right? Food can fill this need at times. But if we're doing this over months or years, we might begin to notice that we're groggy, exhausted, unfulfilled, and getting to the point of burnout. And it's important to understand what value is driving that behavior. Is it a need for release or escape? Is it pleasure? Is it victimhood? And is that value actually supporting the life we want to live? Similarly, if we're just valuing profit or money above all else, that can lead to actions rooted in selfishness, possessiveness, or even cruelty to others around us, and we might find we're alone. And if that brings you joy, I'm not judging. That's money is a tool, it is important, we need it. But is it filling your cup the way you deserve to have your cup filled? Whether we are aware of it or not, the ways we act and the habits we have indicate what we're currently valuing in our lives. So I'll give a personal example here. After I finished my first degree, I was really burnt out. I was tired, I was apathetic, I was exhausted, and that contributed to an end of a relationship. And I just decided I wanted to stop. I needed to stop trying for a bit. I had to stop planning. I had to stop striving to be better than, maybe others. This was very much when I was rooted in um, extrinsic values, when I'd let, external expectations guide my actions and choices. And so I decided to value just rest and freedom and fun above all else. And, for a time it helped. You know, I found a sense of community in my local pub, and I've met some really wonderful people through there. So this isn't criticizing who they are, but over time, spending, time in that environment and not balancing that out with other actions, other supports for myself and for my well-being, I found that my exhaustion actually got worse. I became anxious, very anxious in the new relationship I entered. I was overwhelmed and overstimulated by going out as much as I was. And because I wasn't practicing the things I valued, because there was this vacuum in my life, the values or priorities of others kind of superseded my own. And again, I was just very exhausted. I wasn't nurturing the relationships that were important to me, and other people were just filling that need because it was there. My first brush with acceptance and commitment therapy really stemmed from the unhappiness that hung around me like a fog. I found a free online workbook and I tried to figure out what the hell I needed to do to change to become my old vibrant self. That was about 2 years ago now. I would not have been able to predict where that workbook would take me. I didn't expect it to lead me to move back in with my parents so I could really start to commit to getting my business off the ground, and I didn't expect it to lead me to write my first book, and I definitely didn't expect to be sitting in front of you folks here today recording this webinar. For the record, I do still value rest and freedom and fun, but in this process, I also realized I valued certain things more. My creativity, my authenticity, building mutual and reciprocal relationships in all areas of my life, a personal sense of responsibility and a job well done, and more importantly, my continued growth and learning. I realized that when I built a life that didn't challenge me in any way, I robbed myself of the opportunity to grow into new and exciting versions of myself. And I became apathetic and lethargic because I was cultivating values that were not in alignment with my core self. When I shifted my focus, when I started to focus on the things that really made my heart sing, I was able to cultivate a life and habits that support the person I want to become. This took a lot of self-awareness, patience, and a willingness to confront myself over time. And I needed to be willing to make those life-altering decisions and be willing to leave behind the people who were not able to make this journey with me at the time. And frankly, leave behind people whose core values were just never really in alignment with my own, because that's something we need to be aware of too. But now I am sitting in front of you today, and I never would have made any other choice. All the difficulties were worth it to be sharing this workshop, this webinar with you today. There are any number of values out there. Even this is just really a small list of some of the things. And, I've spoken about some of my own values, my growth and learning, my creativity, my, sense of adventure, or finding really lately it's been a sense of courage, really valuing that bravery and putting myself out there, open-mindedness, and so on. So take a moment to read this screen. Some of these values you're probably thinking, yeah, I do that all the time. This is great. And that's when you kind of have to bring it back into think. Is that value actually helping me be the person I want, or is it just something someone else said, oh, this is important? Assertiveness can play a big role, but if you're feeling like you need to be assertive all the time, are you enjoying that? And if you are, great. But if you're not, it's okay to let go of the values that, other people care about more. In my own experience, some of these have meant, I am not industrious in the way that a lot of folks that I live near might be. I don't work constantly because my flow is more fluid. It's more of a rhythm. It comes and goes, and I've learned to be okay with that. I also, I value fitness, but it's not my driving force or my main self-care strategy. And that's okay, right? This is just all figuring out what our own recipe for success is. All right. So this webinar was just providing a short insight into what a value integration and exploration workshop can provide. The research and the prompts I discussed are pulled directly from that workshop, but then I go on to expand and to bring in more discussion groups and so on, things like that. The Value Integration and Exploration Workshop is a partnership between Vibrant Systems and your organization. Not only will I conduct a facilitated session with your employees to help ground them in themselves and what they care about, but I will then work directly with your organization to develop a communications package following the workshop to help integrate these values into organizational operations and individual roles. By empowering employees to integrate their values into their professional roles, organizations are choosing a path that supports well-being and overall success by improving employee engagement, satisfaction, optimism, and loyalty. And I just want to, point back to those original slides at the beginning. Forbes, Harvard Business Review, WorkStars, Norway, they all agree that it is this human-centered approach to business, to operations, that is going to set your business apart. So if you're wondering what's the point, it is worthy to just invest in your human capital because they are the best resource you have. But it is also going to have those financial returns or that stability through chaotic times that otherwise, companies that are just relying on a paycheck to keep people there, they don't have that. And we're seeing that in high rates of turnover and difficulty with retention. So that is what sets Vue apart from, or will help you set yourself apart from the competition. For those who really want to see the transformational effects of Vue in their workplace, the Vue Plan is an additional package in which I work directly with the management team to create an internal limited time newsletter communicating the values committed to by leadership and how they will seek to implement those values in the workplace. This helps create a sense of solidarity and shared commitment, which will really help your employees understand the importance of this process. I will also help update or, if necessary, create public-facing mission and vision statements to reflect these newly adopted values. And finally, perhaps most critically, I will provide evaluation services to assess implementation of the Vue Plan, again, showing employees you are just as committed and really highlighting areas that maybe some changes need to be made because I want this to be as successful as you do, and I have the skills to make that happen. So why wait? The cost of unhappy and unfulfilled employees is staggering. Lost productivity, advertisement for new positions, training costs, those all pile up, and understaffing contributes to employee burnout, meaning even your loyal employees may end up leaving. And you don't need that. Vue is an investment in your organization's future. So get a quote today, reach out to me either on my website, www.vibrantsystems.ca/get in touch, or email me at danielle.vibrantsystems@gmail.com. I don't have rates because I understand that each of my clients is different and has different needs. So if you're wondering if this is the right fit for you or what it would cost, I really urge you to get in touch with me so we can figure it out together. Thank you for coming, and let's make your story a vibrant one.